This video is sponsored by Anoah Mother Care. Great stuff for great kids.
In fact, after my last one, I asked the doctor to take out my uterus.
Are you serious? Oh what? Oh what? Are you serious?
My name is Sena. I am a lawyer, but right now I'm a stay-at-home mom. And I have 2 kids, a girl who's 3, about to be 4, and a little boy who's 8 months old. Well, the first one happened a few weeks after our traditional marriage. At work, I was sleeping a lot, eating a whole lot. So my friends in the office were teasing me that I was pregnant. I should go and get a pregnancy test. I didn't take it seriously. I thought I was just tired from, the wedding preparations and adjusting to married life. But then I told my husband, and he was like, oh, let's just get a test. And they were on my case. So I bought a test and went home. The next morning, I woke up at 4 a.m., went to the bathroom, and lo and behold, it was positive. So I sat on the toilet for at least 45 minutes contemplating my life, because I knew the life was about to change. Because the plan was to wait. He said 2 years. I said 1 year after marriage. But then here we are, a few weeks after. And we are expecting a third party. So that's how I found out about the first one. The second one, these same friends were on my case. Said it was about time I have number 2. And this colleague I had, a dear friend in the office I had, was also pregnant at the time. She had just found out that she was pregnant. And she was looking for a bump buddy. So she dragged me to the store to go and get a pregnancy test. And I got one. And lo and behold, it was positive. But the second one, I was expecting it more than the first. The first one, it was out of the blue. He was shocked. He was entirely shocked. The first one, he was entirely shocked. He was asleep, and I slapped him awake. And I showed him the test. So, he was a little groggy. He looked at me, he jumped up. I was like, are you sure? I was like, can't you see? We are having a baby. So he sat down for a few minutes, and I think it took a while to sink in. But then he was happy. But that day, in fact, he wasn't himself, because I know he was going around wondering what was going to happen to our lives. But, well, all I can say is we had so many plans when we got married. We were supposed to travel, get to know each other a little. We've been dating for a long time, but getting to know each other in marriage a little bit more. So the initial few weeks was just shock, like, what's going to happen to all these plans? So it took a while adjusting to the idea of getting a third member into the family. It's like all our plans were just thrown into disarray. So it took a while, but then joy came, let's say maybe a few weeks after. That's when I got really happy and excited about it. But the first few weeks, it was trepidation. My pregnancy journey, both of them were tough from the beginning. With the first one, right after I found out, I think 2-3 days after I found out, I started bleeding. It was one day I was just doing the washing at home normally. My husband had gone out for an errand, and I started bleeding. A whole, not a tiny bit, like a periodic flow of blood. So I called him, and he was like, "What? We live in a very traffic congested area." So he was like, instead of waiting for me to come home, take a taxi and go to the hospital, and I'll meet you there. So I went to get a taxi, went to the hospital, and when I got there, even though I put on a pad, my jeans were soaked with blood. So the nurses rushed me to their treatment room, and they asked me what had happened. So I explained that I was just washing, and then it came. And then this very young nurse, after the other 2 who were with me had gone out, she was like, I should tell her what I took. Because that day I was washing, so I was just wearing, house clothes to do the washing. I had taken out my hair was short, and I had taken off my ring because I was doing the washing. I should tell her what I took. What do you mean? Like, what medicine did I take for the abortion? It's like, What do you mean? What are you trying to tell me? That, look at me. She's trying to tell me that I should just explain what I took so they can help me and see if they can save the baby or save my life. And at that point, I just burst into tears because I was confused. I didn't know what was happening. And here was somebody who looked at me because I was small and just judged me that I was going to have an abortion. And when I started crying, my husband walked in. He was like, where's my wife? That they said she's here. And you should have seen the look on her face, like, I'm talking to a married woman. But why did it have to be like that? What even if I was not married? Or what even if I had taken a pill? I mean, was that the best way you could have talked to me? But so after that, they came and I saw the doctor. And he said I had to stay home for some months. I stayed in the hospital for a few days. They stabilized me, sent me home. And that was it. I stayed home for 9 months. I think I went back to work for like some 4 weeks. But when I went back to work, I started bleeding again. And they were like, that's it, no baby, no home. So I was home for 9 months. There was a lot of spitting involved. Spitting, I think I spat for like 7 months. I used to carry a Tampico bottle because it was the only opaque bottle I could find. So I used to carry a Tampico bottle around, but it was very gross. I used to spit all the time. I was nauseous, but I didn't vomit. I used to have a lot of nausea. I didn't vomit. But I was bored at home for 9 months. My husband would go to work, leave me, just me and my dog. I was so bored. But I was home. I wasn't allowed to walk around too much. I was only allowed to go for a few minutes of walking and come back. I wasn't allowed to do any work. I just had to lay on the couch for months and months and months. Oh, I thought, you see other pregnant women, they are happy walking around. I thought, I'll be, have my little bump in my dresses, going to the office. When I go to court, the judges will give me some, little favor because, there's a cute pregnant woman. But none of that happened. I was unhealthy through it all. I didn't expect it, but that's what happened. With the second pregnancy, it also started, when I found out, a few days later, I started bleeding again. So I went to the hospital. They said, I think the same thing as the first one, something called a subchorionic hematoma, but it was a little large. So that's why I was bleeding a lot. And they were afraid it would mess with the pregnancy, so I should stay at home. So I stayed at home for about 3 months, and then I went back to work. When I went back to work for another like 3 weeks, so I went back to work, I think I was about 14 weeks pregnant. In my 18th week, I went to do a scan, or I normally scan, where they check all the parts of the baby. So when I went to do my first scan, the doctor was like, he saw that my baby had a small stomach, so I should wait for 30 minutes, go and drink something, and see if the baby will swallow up some amniotic fluid, and so if the stomach size will increase. But it didn't. After like an hour, it didn't increase. So he was like, I should go and come back after 3 days and see if it will change. So the third day I came back. It was just after the office. I had a meeting at close and I went to do the scan. And like the day before, I used this baby center app. And this woman had come to talk about how she had lost her pregnancy, so she was leaving the app. She said it was from cervical incompetence. She lost her baby. Her baby came out. So that's what happened to her. And I went to read about it. And there was like, sometimes you should check your cervix to see what happens. So when I went for the second scan, I finished the scan. They said the baby was fine. And I had walked out of the doctor's office. And I remembered that, this woman said we should check and see what happens to our cervix. So I went back into the room and I was like, can he check my cervix? Is this something that he does? He was like, sure, why not? It doesn't happen often, but why not? So I lay on the table and he used the ultrasound that they put on your stomach, and he was quiet. And he was like, he thinks he has to use the one that they push in internally. So I should lay down and let him do that. So he did it and he was really quiet. He was like, I shouldn't panic, but I am dilating and my cervix is open and I'm really dilated. So I should go to the hospital immediately. Call my doctor and go to the hospital immediately. So unfortunately, the doctor I was seeing I had two hospitals. There was one that was close to my house and one that was further away. The one that was close to my house, I didn't have her number. So I called the hospital and I was like, this is what the ultrasound doctor said. So I'm coming. He said it's an emergency and I should come. So the receptionist was like, okay, there's a doctor here, so I should hurry up and come. I was like, oh, I'm in traffic. And it just happened that day, there was so much traffic in town, all over Facebook, traffic. I was in traffic for a long time. When I got to the hospital, she said the doctor was gone. There was no other doctor. Did you tell the doctor that I had an emergency, I was coming? No, I didn't tell the doctor. At that point, I was scared, I was tired, so I just decided to drive home. I went home and I told my mom, and she was like, we should go to the other hospital immediately. I was like, oh, I'm tired. I'm really tired. And by the time I got home, it was like 9 p.m. So she just let me sleep, and in the morning we'll go. So she woke me up at 4 a.m. It made me sleep immediately, woke me up at 4 a.m. And that day, I didn't even bath. I think she wiped me in bed, put me in the car, and drove me straight to the hospital. When I saw the doctor, she was like, why am I here? And I told her that, I went to do an anomaly scan, and this is what the guy said. And then she said I should show her the scan. I showed her the scan. She said, go and lie down on the bed immediately. And she put a pillow under me to make sure that my hips were elevated. She's like, she's not going to put any probe in to see what's happening herself, but from the scans, she can see enough. And that if you keep putting things in the area, you can introduce infection. And once it goes to the baby is gone. So she asked if the guy explained what it was, and I said yes, but she explained further that what had happened was I had dilated and funneled to such a large extent that the baby was coming out. And from the scan, they could see the foot of the baby just trying to poke out. So she talked about elevating my hips so that seeing if gravity would push the baby back down. So she called the theater immediately and she was like, she has an emergency and that is the theater free. And they were like, oh, there's another doctor is finishing up a C-section. So tell the doctor to hurry up. That was, I think, the head doctor of the hospital. Tell him to hurry up. And then she got the nurses to wheel me to the theater immediately so that once the C-section is done, I'm in. So they wheeled me to the theater immediately and they're like, where's my husband? Unfortunately, my husband had to travel out of the country when I was about 3.5 months pregnant to work. I was like, I didn't have my husband here. He's not here. But my mom is here. They're like, oh, no, don't bring your mother. The mothers, they panic. So leave her downstairs. You're going to have to go in alone, but we are here with you. So the head doctor, after the C-section, he came and was like, who is the emergency? And what emergency is it? So I showed him my file. He looked at it and he was like, I will do this operation myself. And then he was like, your baby is very healthy, but your body is expelling the baby. The baby is coming out. And it's a very delicate procedure because how he said was you funneling. I'd funneled so large that the cervix was basically open. And so he was going to do the procedure himself. And I cried. Because I was alone. I didn't have my husband. I cried. But the nurses stayed with me. They talked to me in the theater. They played music. They tried to make me laugh. The doctor tried to make me laugh and make me feel as comfortable as I could. But when he started operating, he was quiet. Even though the nurses were talking to me, he was quiet. And when he finished, he said, just like how they saw in the scan, the foot of the baby was there, but gravity had pushed it back a little bit. So he was able to grab some cervix to sew and keep the baby in. So he's done that, and now it's just a waiting game because I was just 18 weeks pregnant. Just a waiting game. So they'll keep me in the hospital for a few days and see how it goes and send me home if everything is fine. So I think after about to the second day, they sent me home. They're like, I shouldn't even lift a bucket. I should lay on my bed the entire time. Only come to hospital for appointments every 2 weeks. But if I feel even a tiny bit of pain, I should rush back to the hospital. So I think 3 days after the operation, I started bleeding. So my mom rushed me back to the hospital, and they discovered that there was an infection there. And they're like, the infection gets to the baby is gone. So I have to stay in the hospital for them to treat this infection. So from 18 weeks to I was 30 weeks, I was in the hospital. No, 31 weeks I was in the hospital. Every day, injections, IVs, medicine. And it was so depressing because my daughter was home. She would come and visit me, come with my mom, sometimes come and visit me. I was so depressed. My husband wasn't there. He would call me every day, twice a day, 3 times a day. Video call, do the best that he could, but he really wasn't there, present, even though he tried to be. My mother-in-law would come and sit with me. My friends, they would come, but still I was depressed because I was scared. The doctors had told me that the babies, if sometimes what happens is your baby still gets pushed out. And if the baby comes out early in Ghana, unfortunately, we don't have the facilities to care for such baby that's that premature. So even if they get me to 24 weeks, the baby may still not survive. So the plan is to get me as far as they can. So every day, one step at a time. These nurses don't let me leave my bed. The most I could do was sit in the chair and look out the window. They would not let me come outside, smell fresh. No, I was inside on the bed all the time. So gradually I got better. In fact, I have so many IVs that you can see the scars on my hands. All my veins collapsed from the different shots that went through. But they finally let me go home at 31 weeks. Even that one, they didn't want to let me go, but they felt so sorry for me because I've been there for so long. I've been crying. The nurses would hear me crying in the middle of the night. So they let me go home with strict instructions to not get up or do anything until I was at least 33 weeks. And even when I went home, it wasn't smooth. After 2 weeks, I was rushed back to the hospital. I was contracting. Because even when I was in the hospital, I was contracting. They would try and stop the contractions. I would go back to the hospital. They kept me for like 4 days. I came back home, I think about the 3rd time in like 5 weeks. That was 36 weeks. I was contracting again. And then the doctor was like, look, you're at 36 weeks. It's 36 weeks exactly. If the baby comes, he will be okay. So we'll just let you deliver. You've been through enough. We'll just let you deliver. With the first one, after I got the baby blues because I didn't know what I was doing. And after I also wasn't physically strong because I had been in bed the entire time. At home, I was not active. I wasn't strong enough to deal with the rigors of having a new baby. The whole waking up in the night and feeding. I just was not up for it physically. And I had problems with breast milk and breastfeeding. So, yeah, I got the baby blues. There were some days that I didn't want to open the curtains to let the light come in because I just wanted to be in the darkness. And sometimes my baby would cry and I would cry. But aside crying, I didn't want to hear her cry. I can't explain it. But I felt this heaviness in the pit of my stomach. Like it just like some stone bee was there, and I couldn't get it out. So it took a lot of support. So my husband had to take me to the hospital. And the doctor was like, he thinks it's postpartum depression. That if it gets too far, then they'll put me on medication. But if I can get over it, if I can go back home and see if I can do things to make me a bit more cheerful, if I get a bit more support, which I had, lots of support. But if it's not working out, then I should come back for medication. If it's fine, then I'll be okay. But I was fine. I didn't need medication. I wanted to be in darkness. I just didn't want any lights coming in. My husband would talk to me and I would yell at him for no reason. He's trying to help me, but I'd yell at him for no reason. I didn't want to see anybody. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Well, when I got home, but the first one, I got home, I think 3 days after having her, and then we were both rushed back to the hospital. So because I was sick and we thought she was fine, but when we got to the hospital, they realized that she was also severely jaundiced. So we stayed for another, I think, 10, 11 days before we came back home. So we spent most of the transition period in the hospital, if that makes any sense. So learning how to breastfeed and everything was done in the hospital while she was under UV lights. So the transition period was not easy. And then when we came back home, my breast milk was not coming. So that was also another big problem. The nurses did the best they could, but it just would not come because I was stressed. I mean, after having gone through all that and then coming back to the hospital and worrying about her, I was stressed. I wasn't getting enough sleep. So they didn't help the breast milk, and it never did come fully. And also with the jaundice, for some reason she couldn't latch properly, and I didn't have anyone per se to teach me how to latch. Like my mother would try, the nurses would try, but I didn't have the support of like, how outside the country here they have lactation consultants who will teach you a few tricks. I didn't have that, so I was basically me trying to figure out how to put this human being on, and it was painful. The milk wasn't coming. I was pumping. It would come like 2 meals and I'll be jubilating over my 2 meals, and the nurses would also be giving me a hard time because they think I wasn't trying enough. But honestly, I was trying my best and I was killing myself trying to give her milk, but it just didn't really work out. So I tried, it did come, but I never fully had as much milk as other women do. So I used to pump like every 2 hours, every 2 to 3 hours until she was 6 months old. I tried my best to do the exclusive. There were some days, because she never latched, so she wasn't breastfeeding. I had to pump and then put in a bottle for her to drink. So I think there were a few times within the 6 months where I had to give her formula because there was no milk left to give her, but we did somewhat exclusive for 6 months for the first one. And then the second one too, he came a little bit early, 36 weeks. He also was not latching well. He was also jaundiced, same story. So also breastfeeding was a problem, but at least with him the milk came more. So we just settled into expressing, and yeah, I did it for 6 months and 3 weeks for him because I felt like because he came early, I had to compensate him small. So that was it. And then with support, but the first one, I had my husband, who was, in fact, he doesn't know, but he was doing like 60% of the work. I had my mother, and I had my mother-in-law. My husband would wake up, like when I would express, he would wake up to feed the baby, to help me get enough sleep. When she starts to cry, he would take her out. In fact, he took a month of work, the first month, just to be with us at home. If he could have taken more, he would have. But he stayed with us at home for a month. He did everything. He helped with the feeding, changing diapers in the middle of the night. We kicked him out of the bed. He was sleeping on the floor, but he didn't mind. He was really, really, really supportive. He made sure I got enough sleep. My mother did the bathing, the rocking, teaching us what to do. And my mother-in-law ensured that we didn't lack food for at least 4 months. Every time she would come, she would bring food and other necessities. Like she would shop for our house, provide for me, my husband, and my mother. So food-wise, we didn't have a problem. And she would come and bring us supplies that we didn't even think about. She was also really, really, really supportive. So those were the 3 angels in my life with the first. And with the second one, unfortunately, my husband was out of the country, was trapped because of COVID. He came for about 3 weeks when the baby was about 7-8 days old, and then he had to leave again for work. And so I did not have the same kind of supports that I had the first time. In fact, baby showed me Pepe. Luckily, he was an easier baby than his sister. His sister would cry. She could cry, but he was easier. But still, handling the toddler who wanted my attention. And because I've been in the hospital for so long, she was deprived of the attention. So she really needed the attention. And then here's a newborn baby too. And no husband that she can coffee take and then disappear and go and sleep. Because your mother, you have to give her that kind of respect. If she's tired, there's nothing you can do. So most days, I didn't know if it was day or night. I was just floating through the entire process, trying to survive. So I didn't have the same support I had with the first one. But anyway, he's 8 months old and we are here. Tears during delivery. With the first delivery, my husband was there, so I had that support. I mean, from beginning to end, he was there with me in the delivery room. In fact, the delivery was quite unexpected because I had gone for a regular checkup, and then I found out that I was in labor. So he was there from beginning to end. And even though I got an episiotomy, I got a regular episiotomy, I was fine. But with my second one, I don't know, for some reason, it seemed extra painful. Even though they put me on pain medication, I was half out of my mind with medication, and I was not able to push as well as I could have. So I got tears, and it was very painful to have gone through delivery. I mean, the second, he just gave me trouble. Delivery, 9 months in the hospital, you've managed to deliver, and then after delivery, they are wheeling you back into theater to sew you up. And they were quite severe. And I don't know how they happened. All I know is that my doctor was very shocked that they had happened. He was very incensed, annoyed with the nurses that it had happened. But it's something that happened to me. And it took a long time to heal, because it's unlike, they're making a surgical line. This one, it was it's like you have a sore, a large cut. So they had to sew me up, and it took a while to heal. So that affected transition in the house as well, because I was dealing with pain from the tears and then having to deal with a new baby. Yeah. The first one, the first one we took in the hospital was fine. The second immunization we took, they told us, when you finish giving her the shots, then give her paracetamol and she'll be fine. The temperature that she ran, we did everything. The temperature would not come down. She was going close to 40. We had to rush her back to the hospital because we did everything. We wiped her down. We gave her paracetamol on time every 6 hours. Like, the temperature was just going up, so we had to rush her straight back to the hospital. So the doctor told us a trick, that since we know that this is how it is for her, we should give her 30 minutes before. So we tried that the next time, and it worked better. But she ran really high temperatures with the immunization. It was not easy for her. She wouldn't sleep and the temperatures would be for like 3-4 days constantly. For her, it was really tough on her. But then he was better. We use the same trick with him and give it to him 30 minutes before the shot. But he didn't run temperatures as high as her, even though it was tough for him too. But he was better than the first one. First one, in fact, she gave us trouble. She's still giving us trouble till now. Yeah, with milestones, the one that surprised me the most was the smiling, the first one. Because that was the time when I was going through postpartum. I was about 6 weeks after. I was still heavily in the baby blues. So one day I was sitting in the living room by the window, and I was just holding her, and she was awake, and she smiled at me. You could tell I wasn't like one of these. She actually smiled at me, and that was healing in itself. Honestly, I remember what she was wearing that day. She was wearing this purple onesie. That was healing in itself. I think that kind of brought me back out, because that smile, I'll never forget. So that was one that was really important to me. And then she was okay with sitting up. It came around the time that it should have. She used to love to just sit in her chair in front of the TV and interact with us in the living room. So she sat for a long time. When it came to crawling, the girl was lazy. So she could crawl by the time she was like 8 months. She had started in 7 months, 8 months. She had started, but she put her here, and you expect if you're moving back, she'll follow you. This girl will cry. She'll stand at the same spot and cry before she'll move one step forward and cry before she'll move again. The other one, the little boy, he is active, rambunctious from the beginning. In fact, he started bobbing his head and moving around in the crib. By the time he was about 3 to 4 months old, he was already moving around in the crib, rolling around all over, moving forward. So the doctor was like, look, he's already crawling. That's his form of crawling. He had already started moving forward, and he never learned to sit properly because he started moving. Before he could learn how to sit, he was moving. So once you put him down to sit, he moves into a lying down position so he can move. Whilst the other one would like to sit and just sit at one place and enjoy himself, he wanted to move around. So I think it's now that he's crawling really well, but it's now that his sitting is proper. Yeah. And he's standing and cruising even way ahead of time because he's just 8 months old, but he's standing very comfortably and holding furniture and moving around, yeah. So with her, I did exclusive for 6 months, 6 months on the dot, because I was going back to work. So we started with baby rice cereal. That was the first meal she had. She had rice cereal, and she took a little bit of it. And I had read, I'd gone and done all the researching. So I started doing with apple purees, fruits and vegetable, carrots, sweet potatoes, and not mixing things, just doing one thing at a time for like 3 days to see how she would adjust. But the girl hated food from the get-go. She didn't want to eat. She would eat, but if you put 1 spoon in her mouth, she would keep that spoonful of puree in her mouth for at least 3 minutes. So she would take over an hour to finish a small bowl of puree, and she's not full. She would eat, but it would take her an hour because she would keep it in her mouth for a long time. But she would eat everything you gave her. The second one, I was a bit more relaxed with him. I started also with the same purees, but he eats quickly. He eats very, very quickly. He doesn't eat a lot, but he eats quickly. So started the same sweet potatoes. He likes sweet potatoes a lot. Potom. He hates cocoa. But if you give him some potom with some dry fish and some carrots in there, he really likes it. He mashed potatoes with some broccoli mixed up with milk. He likes that kind of thing. So far, I haven't started giving him banku yet. Very soon we'll start. Yes, but she, even up till now, she still doesn't eat well. She takes about an hour to finish lunch, even if it's a small portion. But he eats very, very, very quickly, and he's full quickly, and he wants to be done with it. With the first one, it really affected my work because like I said, even though I had gone past 6 months before I started work, I still wanted to make sure she was having enough breast milk, and my breast milk wasn't coming. So I used to wake up to pump, and I wasn't getting enough sleep. So I'd go to work, and I'd take some time off to go and pump. My office made it really, really, they made sure I was able to still mother and work, because they provided a place that I could have some privacy and pump. And if I tell that I'm going to express, my boss was very understanding about it. So they were very, very, very helpful. In fact, they were very supportive through the entire process. I don't know how many offices will sit and let you sleep at home for 9 months and let you come back to work. So they really helped with my transition. But it still wasn't easy. I wasn't getting enough sleep. So I wasn't able to focus and be the best I could be in the beginning. But then it got better when she got to like 9 months, and after I stopped giving her breast milk at 1 month, at 1 year, sorry, I bounced back into work and I was fine. With the second one, I haven't returned to work for health reasons and for also because I need a break after what I've been through. I needed a little break. Know what I'm doing. The first one, I had absolutely no idea. I am a researcher. In fact, I am very nitpicky. There was no book on this planet that I didn't read. Notes. I had a whole notebook that I used to take notes in on what to do. But parenting is strange. There's no manual for it. There's no manual for it. You can do all the reading and the researching that you can, but every baby is entirely different. Even with the two I have, they're entirely different. So the first one, it was very disappointing when I'd read things and I'd try and do them and she wouldn't stick to it and it didn't work out the way I expected. So it was part of the reason why I was depressed, because I expected things to go in like a particular way and it didn't work out that way. And I was giving my husband a hard time because I wanted him to do things my way, parent my way, and it was not working out. But with the second one, I tried to let go of all of that. I became a lot more relaxed because I learned that with the first one, I didn't know what I was doing. She would guide me. So with the second one, I let him guide me, and it's been easier dealing with him than I did with the first one. So I guess maybe the trick is to just, be you, let it flow, trust yourself. Yes, a little research, a little advice, but at the end of the day, once you do your best, you're a good mother. That's it. I think with the first one, I would have relaxed a lot more. I would have relaxed because I think I would have enjoyed her better if I had just relaxed, because I was too busy trying to be perfect. So I was not in the moment where I could have been enjoying her, singing to her. I was busy trying to pump and extract milk. I should have enjoyed her better, because she's wonderful. Once I started to relax, mothering became entirely beautiful. Whilst in the beginning, it was just stressful. In fact, many times I wonder if I had done the right thing in the beginning. Because now, I wasn't ready to be a mom, and then here it is. Had I done the right thing? Like, should I just run away? But once I started to relax, it became better. So I wish I had relaxed a little bit more with her, because I'm enjoying mothering him in the beginning more than I did with her, and it's one of my regrets. Yeah. Dealing with my own situation. And I'd come down one day to do one of the scans the doctor said I should do, I think about once every week. I met a lady who was also waiting to see the doctor, and she looked about 4 months pregnant. And she looked very, very sad. So I asked her what was wrong, if she was okay. And she was like, she had just lost her baby, and she started to cry. And she had just given birth. She started to cry. I was like, what's the matter? And she's like, they said she had an infection because her cervix had opened up and the cervix had gone up to the baby. So the baby died. And basically she had incompetent cervix, the same thing that I had. But at least mine was detected. I was through some God's divine intervention. Mine was detected, whilst hers wasn't. Whilst it's something, and I also went on Facebook during my time, and I joined 3 Facebook groups, all dealing with women with incompetent cervix. Some of them have lost 3 pregnancies or more before their doctors even raised the topic that maybe they had incompetent cervix, and gave them preventative cerclages to prevent other losses. And during the time, I heard about other women who had lost babies in their 5th month and in their 4th month, and these maybe 50% of them could have been preventable if somebody had just told them to check their cervix. I mean, it's something simple. Like you read that between 16 to 22 weeks, you should check your cervix. But the first one I didn't check. Nobody told me to check. And the second one, if it wasn't for something that I saw somewhere on Baby Center, I wouldn't have known. And my son would not be here. It was just God's grace. I mean, he was meant to be here. And the point is, why do I even say that? Because everybody's baby is meant to be here. Why do you lose your baby because of something so simple? It's unfair. There should be a way more education out there on incompetent cervix than there is, because it happens to so many, many women. It's unbelievable the number of babies who have died because of something like this. And I cannot imagine growing a baby inside you for months and then he just goes. Or looking at my son right now and imagine him not being there. I can't imagine what my life without him right now that he's here. So that the idea of not having him here is frightening for me. There should be more education. Women need to know. But the first one, I was fine. The second one, I was eating everything under the sun. The first one, my husband was here. He was monitoring me. He was my policeman. So I'll eat, fruits, watermelon. He'd satisfy my cravings, but only to a certain extent. If I want ice cream, he will give me. If I want watermelon or cheese or fish, he'll bring me. But he cut my sugar. In fact, Coke, Fanta. He didn't allow me to have any fizzy drink or juice or anything. 9 months of pregnancy. So I was fine. Second one, he wasn't here. I ate everything under the sun. In fact, I was in the hospital room because of my small depression. I ordered pizza. Add Sprite to it. I got gestational diabetes. But and it made my baby grow a little bigger than he was supposed to be, which maybe kind of helped him. But it's something I had to deal with in the end, because it could have developed into regular diabetes if I hadn't cut it and taking my medication. So I had to cut my diet. I was eating just vegetables. They gave me a little portion of brown rice I could eat in both pregnancies. In fact, I love cocoa. I was not allowed to eat cocoa again. It was the worst thing that could have happened to me. I wasn't allowed to eat cocoa again. I wasn't allowed to eat certain fruits again. Oh, it was horrible. It was really, really horrible. And even after I had the baby, it took a few months for it to stabilize. So my mother had to really be on me on my diet to make sure that it went away, because we didn't want it to develop into diabetes. So that whole thing that when you're pregnant, you can eat what you like. It's not everybody. The most rewarding part of motherhood, I would say, is the smiles, the laughter. I mean, when I started working and my daughter started walking, when I'd come home and I'd park the car, she would run to the window and hold on to the bars and be shouting, "Mama, Mama." It was, after hard days, like all my stress would just go away. So the smiles, the hugs, the kisses, the love, unconditional from her eyes, from his eyes, it is entirely unconditional, because she can do something naughty and I'll spank her small right now, but she'll come back to me to come and comfort her, and she'll give me the best hugs, even after I'm the one who has, given her a little bit of spanking. So that has been the most rewarding thing, seeing them grow. Because from this tiny baby that I brought home to this almost 4-year-old who's going on 55, and this 8-month-old, it's amazing. It's amazing. Every day is something new. Every day is something different, especially with her. Every day is something different. New vocabulary. She's always scolding us, putting us in our place. It's amazing. And another thing that has been, it's like looking at my kids, they are perfect balance. My daughter looks exactly like my husband. It's a photocopy of my husband and acts exactly like me. Her behavior is exactly like me. Precocious, annoying, talks too much. That's me. And also my mother-in-law. But I mean, in a loving way. Not anything, in a loving way. She's a perfect combination of us. And my son, my husband thinks he looks like him, but he looks like me. and I think is going to turn out to be just like my husband in behavior. So they are a perfect combination. It's beautiful to watch.
Thank you.
This video was brought to you by Anoah Mother Care. Great stuff for great kids.